Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Behind the Edge podcast. This is a special one for a few reasons, the most important one being that we are joined by our very first guest, Eric Ziliak. Welcome to the podcast, Eric.
Thanks for having me on your podcast, the very first guest. Appreciate it.
And Eric is the owner and operator of Indiana Knives. If you live near Bloomington, Indiana, you can visit his retail location in the American Arms Gun Shop. Otherwise, check out his selection online at indianaknives.com. So we have some housekeeping to do. First, unfortunately, Vextos couldn't be here today because he's spending time with his family. So it's just going to be me, Caleb, and Jacob as the main hosts for today. About the podcast name, this was mentioned in a previous episode, but behind the edge is a technical term that refers to the thickness of the blade at the transition from the primary bevel to the secondary or edge bevel. It's just one part of blade geometry, some others being stock thickness, edge angle, stuff like that. We are not affiliated in any way with the differently named Behind the Blade podcast. And as far as I'm aware, Behind the Blade is not a technical term in the knife community. So, I was asked about our name by a listener on Instagram, so hopefully that clears things up. About our host names, you already know me as Brian, Jacob is Jacob, and Echo's real name is Caleb, and Vextos' real name is Angelo. So there's that. Couple last things. Chris Lay, also known as Chris Lay Photography on Instagram, he designed the logo for the podcast, so a big shout out to him because it looks amazing. I'm very happy with how that turned out. I don't know what you guys think about it.
It looks great. I think he's still going through different iterations with it, but as far as I'm concerned, it's way better than just the black text that I had, or the white text on black background.
Yeah, I like the design in general too, just like the general layout and where you put the names and everything. Just I don't know, it all appeals.
It's
to me, so.
It's very cartoony looking, and I just think that kind of fits the podcast.
It's gonna fit that music.
the music.
So yeah, and if you sign up for the giveaway, the winner will be announced at some point during this episode. Follow our Instagram page at Behind the Edge Podcast for news, updates, giveaways, and other knife-related content. And that's all for housekeeping. So, okay, that was a lot. Normally, there's not going to be that much. Okay, so quick pocket dump. Let's start with you, Eric. What are you carrying today?
Yeah, so I just had my Protec Magic. I had him do a custom one for me and laser engrave my logo on there for me.
Yeah, you really like that knife, don't you? I've seen you have it showed off a lot on the Discord.
Yep, that's generally my go-to.
Yeah, isn't that the one that's got like the scale that like pops out, like it pops to the side or something like that? And
it's just like a bolster release. It's actually just a backlock design, but pretty simple to take apart and maintain and stuff. But
very cool auto. Brian, you can go next.
Well, I have a really cool one. I bought the blue exclusive Quiet Carry Drift, which is, I don't know, some people have already seen me almost drop it, but
it was a really good catch.
But it's okay. The knife's okay. I'm okay. This is, probably in my opinion, it sort of, reminds me of the Shabazz, not in terms of the look, but in terms of the quality. Because I just get that feeling like the more I play with it, the more it's gonna break in, the easier it's gonna be to like thumb flick. It's already really easy to spidey flick.
Yeah,
but
it looks like it would be.
Yeah, it's one of those knives that you just get and you think to yourself like, oh, like the quality control is probably very consistent. Like, I know that Stasa had a drift that he measured at 14 thou BTE, mine is 13 thou BTE, which you can attribute to like variation in just people's, where they're measuring, right? Like if it's 1 thou, it's usually like more of that kind of variance. And then the heat treat is done by Peters, which they Rockwell test every single blade that they heat treat. So, we know for certain that initially, at least, it did hit the intended Rockwell hardness. So that's cool. And then it's one of those knives where it's just like perfectly, like the lockup is solid, but there's no lock stick whatsoever. Like not even a hint. So, I mean, yeah, this is actually the first knife that I've ever liked that didn't have lock stick. Because most of the time I like a knife, and it's despite the fact that it has a little bit of lock stick, but I just like it overall, like the Shiro Neon Light. It has some Shiro stick. But this knife, I'm just like, oh, I like it, and it doesn't have lock stick, so that's awesome.
Lock stick ruins the knife a lot of times for me personally. I just can't.
If it's bad, it
can't get past it. That drift, it looks a lot like a Ferrum Forge design for some reason to me.
Yeah, I think it's the choil.
Yep, I agree with that. It's very reminiscent of a Ferrum Forge, but I like that part about it. It's very, ergonomic looking.
It hurts me when you say that, but it's okay.
yeah, I know that's a touchy subject for some people, but
well, it does have some Ferrum Forge elements, but it also has some like giant mouse biblio kind of
no, you're completely right. Yeah, I mean, I have the so that's a good segue actually into what I'm carrying today. So I have the Fox Knife Suru, which is a Voxnaze design, and yeah, definitely
they look very
similar looking knife. This knife,
I think I saw that the other day. I ordered in one of those for a customer once, and I'm really impressed by it. But
it's really interesting, right? So this is a Discord pass around that we're doing. This is our paid pass around. So like I don't know, 20 something odd people are like passing around this knife throughout the Discord around the North America. And it's an M390 blade and a full carbon fiber handle, and even the lock bar itself is carbon fiber. So that's probably the most interesting part about it to me is like it's just completely one chunk of carbon fiber, with a lock bar insert, as you know, that's the part of the lock. So I don't know. It's really interesting. It's got kind of high lock bar tension. And the action, I think because of that, the action kind of suffers. But overall, I'm really impressed by it. It's a little bit pricey. It's like just a hair shy of like $300, so it's kind of up there. Oh. Yeah, it's. I think I could be wrong, but it's over $200.
Like $270-ish.
Yeah.
So that one has multiple versions, right? Like there is a titanium.
There is a titanium version, yes. So that I'm tempted to buy this knife. I think I would buy the titanium version over the carbon fiber just because I'd be worried about anything going wrong. Like, Gerald from, was it Outpost 76 on Instagram or something like that?
Yeah, on Instagram and YouTube. Yeah.
He commented on my Instagram post, which if you don't follow me, it's Echo Gecko Knives. He commented that his Suru developed lock rock. So, Yep. So, and I think he's talking about the same like carbon fiber configuration. So that might be something to look to by the end of the pass around, see if it develops any, because it's already been. I took it apart and it's already well worn in. So we'll have to see what happens with it. But I really like it so far. It's really nice. Probably one of the best knives, best choils on a knife that I've experienced. So pretty cool. So Jacob, what are you carrying?
I'm carrying the Benchmade Megumi today. It's one of their discontinued designs. It's a really, really cool little knife. It's carbon fiber and wood, with a very sharp thumb stud with a wood inlay. It's really classy looking. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to keep it or not.
Mm-hmm.
They're somewhat difficult to get, but
I've never heard of this.
Carry it enough. So it has a really cool thing called a knack lock. That's basically the Spyderco Smock locking mechanism.
Right.
Just a little bit stiffer and a little bit smaller, but it's the same basic lock. And it's the only one that I've seen Benchmade use that lock on is this knife.
Yeah, that's kind of cool looking. I'm just looking it up right now. That carbon fiber, like between the wood.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool design.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of it. That's cool.
How long ago did they make those?
I'm not sure. It's been discontinued for a few years.
It has that Saibu inlay in the thumb stud too.
Yeah, it's a Nakamura design.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I get that vibe from it for sure.
And the thumb stud's really sharp.
So it's kind of flared on the top, which would be fine normally, but it's so small it really digs into your thumb. It's not super comfortable to open, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of, so the thumb hole on the Suru, I forgot to mention, it's actually pretty sharp. So like that's kind of a flaw it has. It's kind of like when I middle finger flip. It can be thumb flicked and middle finger flipped really well, but when I middle finger flip it, you can see it just like, shreds the top of my fingernail,
Yeah.
It's just kind of annoying, but oh well.
Yeah, I should mention, for the drift, it's the exact opposite. The thumb hole is so heavily chamfered that like it doesn't matter for the middle finger flick, but when you're trying to do that thumb flick, like it's kind of slippery, which is why I almost dropped it the first time. So,
yeah, if the thumb hole's too rounded out when you try to open it with your thumb, I have the same issue on a lot of knives like that. It's just too, like you said, rounded, so the slope, you just kind of slide off every single time if the detent's strong enough.
Yeah, so that's the only unfortunate thing, but other than that, great knife.
Yeah, it looks like a great knife. I actually am now looking at it. I'm really like the back, I guess the screws or whatever. Are they flat?
Yes, they are completely flush.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it's really cool looking.
Yeah, and then it also has how do I put it? These I think it's a thing that Quiet Carry does where they do small milling marks, not like holes.
Yeah, those 4 dots.
Yeah, the 4 dots. I really just like that. I don't know. It's just having them right there. It just makes something that
it looks really cool.
Otherwise, really plain have a little bit of an accent to me. So
it's like a non-obtrusive. Yeah, it's like a non-obtrusive design.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the Suru I have, which has
it looks like Brian went to town on it with his drill press.
It's just got a million holes all over it. I know this, a lot of people don't like that if they have trypophobia or whatever. That fear of holes.
I did that and I didn't like it after I did it.
It is kind of ugly.
On Rowdy. Oof.
Yeah, I hate you. It looks so bad.
It's dead.
Brian, you've killed a lot of knives lately. I feel.
Yeah, it's for science though. It's all good.
What's the science that you're conducting?
Well, sometimes science is about accidental discoveries. So you kind of just do stuff, and then you might accidentally discover something good, right?
I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, upcoming knives and news. So, like we mentioned, I'm carrying the Quiet Carry Drift. This is the blue exclusive, so it's Cerakoted titanium. That sold out, but tomorrow, which is when this episode will likely be released at some point, so we don't know what time, but the Quiet Carry Drift will be back in stock, the non-exclusive version. So I'm assuming that's just going to be not Cerakoted, and that's kind of cool. I wonder if that's going to sell out too.
I would assume probably yes.
I haven't heard any word on how many of them they're doing, but they're super popular at the moment, at least among the Discord group. A lot of people want them.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything bad about them on Instagram or anything, so I expect that there's going to be a decent amount of hype.
Yeah, I've never heard anything bad about Quiet Carry in general, actually.
A
lot of people like them.
I haven't heard anything bad either. I just hear people saying they're always out of stock.
Well, yeah, that's because people like them so much.
I have the Strand from them. It has a bit of lock rock, but I think that's just from it being beat on a bit. But overall, it's a really good knife. I really don't have any complaints about it.
The Strand is also out of stock, right?
Ergonomic. I believe so. I picked it up from someone on Discord for $50.
Yeah, and that's also a cheaper one. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I think new they're $125 or something. Mm-hmm. This one's what?
Yeah, they're $129. It looks like they have 2 of the versions available on their site.
Do they have a price yet on the regular Drift?
I think it's $270. I want to say it's $270.
Not bad.
But that's more than double the Strand. So.
Yeah, for sure.
So
the Strand's also using D2 or something. So the Drift is a whole nother league in terms of everything, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so I would imagine, everything from not just the blade feel, but also fit and finish, everything like that is just going to be better. So yeah, no, I love this knife. It's great. But anyway, so just want to let people know that sold out. It seems like it's going to be a popular knife. If you manage to hear about it beforehand, you should definitely grab one. In my opinion, I think the quality control is going to be pretty consistent. So if all of ours are good, I would assume yours will be good as well.
If it's not sold out by the time this podcast airs, which will probably be around like 8 p.m. Monday or something like that. So
good luck.
Good luck, everyone. And
yeah.
Tell us if you got it.
Yeah. Speaking of good luck, so the next piece of news we want to talk about is, and we mentioned how funny it is that this is even news, but it really is. There's a Shamwari clone that came out recently. It is by SMKE, which I still don't know what that stands for. What does that stand for? Does anyone know?
MSKE?
No, SMKE.
No. I don't know.
Because I read that, I was like SMK, and in my brain I was following. I was like, oh, I know that. That's Smoky Mountain Knife. and then it was an E.
Someone on Discord made up a word for the last letter there, but we can't say it on here.
Yeah, well, but yeah, so that was me. Know. But it's okay. I'm. But anyway, so it's on AliExpress, and there's some interesting details about it, right? Or there's some details about it that make it interesting. So first of all, it's there are two versions. One is in Damascus. I think it's VG10 based, and the other is an M390, which they actually welcome you to test. So they say it's between 60 to 61 HRC. So there's that. It's same thing as the normal titanium and whatever, but the design, the profile is actually a little bit different. In addition to it being 3.5 inches instead of the 3-inch that the Wii production Shamwari is going to be. So those are some details that make it more interesting for some people. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, what do you guys think about this one?
It's definitely very cool. It's expensive, actually, is my first thought for a clone. I guess I always think of clones being like $50-ish for like a decent one.
Some of them get up to like $200 or $300.
Yeah, well, I know the Shiro ones, the Shiro clones can get very expensive. But I mean, I think this is going to be something that people are just going to buy. I mean, regardless of your like philosophical beliefs about buying a clone, this is going to be something that a lot of people buy because they want to test out a Shiro that isn't, $2,000,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm normally really, really against clones, honestly. From just a moral standpoint, I think it's kind of crap. Not to tear anyone apart that has a Shiro clone, but if you pay $300 for a Shiro clone, just buy one you use or something like that for $5 or $6. Anyway, this one though, like you mentioned, if you want a Shamwari, it's like $2,000. Wii is dropping a production model, but there aren't going to be that many, and even those are going to be probably $100 more than this. So if you're broke and you want to try out a Shamwari and you can't get the Wii one, this is going to be about your only option, really.
Yeah, I mean, people buy Shabazz clones like crazy, so I assume this is kind of the same, market.
Well, this is going to be the new thing because you actually can't buy Shabazz clones anymore.
Really?
Yeah, they don't make them anymore. The cloners, they've moved on. So this is one of the things they're moving on to. And let's be real, this is not much different, right? The Shamwari is a front flipper Shabazz, in my opinion. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but that's what it is. So
it's still a front flipper though, which is pretty unique. And but yeah,
so for people on because I think generally most of us are against like clones in general. So for example, so people draw the line at different places. Almost everyone says counterfeits are bad. So if you actually have like the exact same details and the logo and you try to pass it off as real, that we consider, pretty much everyone considers that to be bad. When it comes to clones where it's obvious that it's not the real thing, like for example, this isn't even remotely the same size, they actually changed the shape a little bit, then it gets a little murkier where people go, okay, well, we're not trying to pass it off as real because there's no way anyone who knows anything about knives could think this is the real one. Because it has no logo or anything.
Yeah. So. It's not like they're like trying to brand it as a Shamwari.
Right, they're not trying to sell it as a fake to trick someone, basically.
Mm-hmm. It's not like a fake. It's a clone. Like if you, I guess that kind of has different meaning in the knife world.
Right, and so where people draw the line there sometimes is they say, okay, well, even if it's not trying to pass off as a fake, it can take away business from the maker or the original creator of the design, right? That's what people.
And that's where I would normally stand at, but in this case, you can't get them.
Yeah, so that's where I normally stand too, where I'm like, okay, well, it's still bad because it hurts the business of the maker or the company that creates them. But this is one of those situations where I have sincere doubts that there will be enough Wii production Shamwaris for everyone. I think it'll be very much like the Drift, where these just sell out quickly. There's way more hype for them than the Drift, and
Yep.
and they're not making that many because for some reason Gareth Bull wants to sell them on his own instead of through Wii. And he's not giving them rights to the design either. So it's literally just going to be a small batch run, like a sprint run almost. I don't think that's going to last.
How is that going to work anyway, that he's like selling it on his own? Is he having them like manufacture the knife and then he QCs it himself?
So in theory he'll QC them. I don't actually know if he will, but
right.
But yeah, in theory, so they'll make it, they send it to him, he should QC them, and then you buy it directly from him, so he ships it himself.
Interesting.
And everything from warranty and stuff would all go through him in theory.
Quick question: he still lives in South Africa, right?
Yeah.
So for shipping purposes, does it make a lot of sense to do that versus?
Because Eric, you probably know shipping to like internationally is super expensive.
Yep, that's generally why I avoid doing it. It's just such a big hassle for a smaller business to do. So I generally just stick to the United States.
I have no idea why he's doing it this way. I'm not a fan of it because he doesn't have the best reputation in terms of customer service at the moment.
I don't see why he wouldn't just send them to dealers, mark up the price a little bit.
Yeah, or just have it sold through Wii. Wii has an excellent reputation. Nobody's ever been like, oh, I didn't get my knife from Wii, So
yeah,
I don't understand the decision. But either way, the point being that these knives are going out, and they're probably going to get sold out. At which point, if you want a Shamwari and you can't afford the $2,000 ones, the clone might be an okay choice. Even morally speaking, it might be okay because it's not going to hurt the business of the maker at the point where you're not making enough for them to sell out anyway. So
yeah, no one's sitting there with $2,000 in their pocket going, "Oh, do I buy the clone?"
Yeah, exactly. So
no, if you're in the market for a Shamwari, you're going to get a real Shamwari.
Right. So if you have the 2K like on hand, easy, great. You're going to get a real one as soon as it comes up. You're not even going to consider the clone. If you are looking at the production version, which is 300, and then you see this clone version, which is 160, it's kind of closer there. And you might think to yourself, okay, well, if I can't get the Wii one, maybe I'll get the clone. Or alternatively, you might think, my hand is a little bit too big for the 3-inch clone, or for the 3-inch real one. I might go for the 3.5-inch clone because I like the design, but whatever. So it's definitely a little murkier, I think, in this case than in most other cases, because a Shiro you can still buy all the time, right? Like. In terms of Shiro clones, like when you buy a M390 clone Shiro for 300, and instead of the real one for 500, like you are kind of taking away business from the original maker in some sense.
I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case here. I think most people can be okay with just getting the clone here because I really don't think those Wii ones are going to last very long.
Yeah, and also I do want to point out, even though we don't agree with it, doesn't mean we think you're a bad person if you do buy clones.
Yeah,
it's just that we personally don't morally.
That's completely up to you. Especially for some people, like the funds are a big deal. It's 150 to 300 isn't a massive jump to me, but for some people that's night and day.
Right, and it's like two of the same knife. So and that's the thing. Like it's one of those things where we don't like it ourselves, but we have friends in the Discord who buy clones, right? And we're still friends with them, like we still like them and everything, but we just disagree on that one thing. And so look, buying a clone is not like murdering someone where we have to unequivocally be like, oh, that's bad, you're bad, Like, it's like, you bought a clone, okay, great. You just don't share our belief in terms of it matters that it hurts the makers. Maybe you think it doesn't hurt the makers for different reasons. Because that's an argument, too. Sometimes people will say, oh, for Striders, the clones actually help, right? And Strider himself has said he doesn't care about clones. Like, he doesn't think it hurts his business. So, it depends.
I also don't know anyone who buys Striders, so.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, it depends on the market and the context, I think. Context is really important.
I actually have I know a person that lives in my neighborhood back in my hometown that buys Striders. Interestingly.
Ooh.
Only person I know that buys Striders.
I have
So.
a couple guys that come into the shop that have a few striders, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah. Oh, and a knife, like a local dealer I had. He also owned some striders personally. So those are the only two people I know that own striders and like that I've ever met.
There's a lot of them. I just haven't met them yet. Yep. I just know there's a lot of them.
I like striders. I think I like their design. I know there's like, varying opinions about them, but I kind of think the design looks cool.
I will say I tried out the Strider Protect collab thing at a dealer a couple hours from me. It was actually pretty nice. It may have just been Protect's quality, but it was pretty good.
Protect is good. Yeah.
It was the first knife I had tried.
Striders or the larger ones?
It was the small one.
Yeah, I have a green one in the shop, but yeah, they don't look like they'd be as ergonomic as they are. But
it's really surprising.
Yes,
honestly.
Completely agree, and that's where actually that argument comes in. So, someone on the Discord sent me for a regrind a clone SNG, I think it was. I don't know which model, but it was a Strider, clone Strider. And I had written off Striders completely because I was just like, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to write it off, but I was like, I always thought they just weren't very good knives. And then, like, just the design wouldn't be comfortable, things like that. And I held it and I was like, oh, wait, the basic design is actually not bad.
Yeah.
I was actually very much impressed by the design, even though when you look at it, it looks blocky. It really didn't feel that way to me. So, and I'm still not going to buy one for different reasons, not related to the knife, but more the person. But besides that, like I can see why for some people they would hold a clone and be like, oh, maybe I want the real one, and they could actually help his business in that way.
Yeah, Brian, I feel like every time we finish talking about a certain knife, you go, but I'm still not going to buy one.
He doesn't buy knives, that by now.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, right, is that when I never say I'm going to buy a knife, I just already buy it.
Right, yeah. You just acquire it.
I'm not going to be like, oh, that looks, I'm almost always just like, I'll grab it at the time. Like, that's how it is.
Yeah, that's funny. Moving on. Timeaskest Damasteel 520.
So
oh no
I want a 520 so bad. I'm gonna for sure get one if I can get one in time. But when I saw the Timeaskest, it was just a picture of the bolsters. I don't have it, unfortunately. It was on their story, but I freaked out and I was like, I would love to replace the Zerk with Timeaskest. That'd be great. And then I went to their website and the listing is for the Timeaskest Damasteel 520. And it is literally more than double the price.
Yeah.
Is this listing?
The regular one is $580. This one's $1,270.
Yeah, I was about to ask. I was like, is this listing price accurate?
Yes.
Oh, man.
There's no way.
The 520.
Can I say hell on this podcast?
Yes.
That's
There's
fair.
no way in hell I'm buying a $1,300 CKF.
But I mean, even the base model, though, I look at it and it is the hands down the most gorgeous front flipper I have seen today.
I want one so bad.
Like current
so bad.
or upcoming, the most gorgeous front flipper to date. Which is why it makes me so sad. Because, okay, look, like this is I'm not going to call it a design flaw because it's something that's not going to matter to 99.9% of people. But you know how where the ricasso is, like that's where the stop pin contacts? Where it's kind of like it contacts at the sharpening choil, if that makes sense. So as you sharpen and sharpen and sharpen the knife, eventually you are going to sharpen away the area where the stop pin contacts, and that's going to cause problems. The thing is, that's never going to happen for like most people because who cuts enough to actually sharpen back that far?
Unless you slap this thing on a Tormek and go to town.
Yeah,
you're hurting me.
But it is just a theoretical thing. That bothers me where I'm just like, why couldn't they just make it an internal stop pin? Like, why?
Just add a secondary sharpening choil. Just right above it.
So, I don't know. Just for that reason alone, I can't buy it. But I completely still think it is the most gorgeous front flipper on the market. I still think that, the fit and finish is probably going to be excellent because CKF, all the ones I've had were excellent. And I still think the heat treat's going to be fine. So, it's still going to be a winner of a knife, just not for me. And I hate to say that because you just said I always say it's not for me, but it's really not. I just don't want this knife. I'm not going to buy it.
Literally nitpicking sharpening choils to like stop you from buying the knife.
Yeah, definitely cool looking.
Yep.
You think you'll get one, Eric?
Probably not.
Yeah, I can't imagine I would get one of these, especially at 1270. No way. I think I said on a previous podcast, above $1,000 is just a no for me.
$1,000, you're stepping into a whole other world of knives, and I really can't believe that. I'm sure they're gonna sell. There's people that just love CKF, but they're not gonna sell one to me.
Hey man, there's people that buy Norsemans and Chamois, so
yep.
I mean, this will probably sell.
That's true.
So I accidentally skipped
I'm
one of our.
comfortable with like $300 knife range to carry, and yeah, like $1,000 knives are just a little bit much for my personal taste. But
Yeah, I'm more like most of my knives are around like $140. That's like just where it falls. I don't know why.
I think my highest one goes up a little above $500, but most of my stuff is, like you said, Eric, in that like sub $300 range.
yeah, because
I'm not worried about hurting it.
Yeah.
I'll spend under 1,000. Anything under 1,000.
Oh, we know, Brian.
Yeah, we know.
That's all good.
Chris Reeve 2 weeks in.
But other than that, I see. There's a reason not to go over 1,000 though, and that's because it is so hard to find a maker who the only reason the knife costs over 1,000 is because of like Timeaskest or something.
Yeah.
Like, and I just don't care for that, right? I'm like, Timeaskest, whatever. I don't like how it looks, so I'd rather get a less expensive version in what I think is a classier material.
Yeah,
that's why I'm glad they're offering 2 tiers of this too. They're not just selling a $1,300 version. They're selling one that it's not affordable. I'm not going to sit here and call it affordable. It's stupid and it's a lie. But it's a bit more feasibly priced for most people.
Yeah, that's fair. So I accidentally skipped on our upcoming knives news list. The Penna front flipper that sold out fast.
I heard like 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes. Personally, I feel like that's I don't know. That is fast, but I've been in the rush to Spyderco sprints. Like at 3 minutes or less. So.
Yeah, this is still impressive because it is a completely different thing.
That's true.
We have never seen on a production level a front flipper traditional knife, right? It's been hyped for so long.
Except for his customs.
Yeah, I mean on the production level, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
not as far as I can remember.
And every single version of it also sold out, not just the nice looking micarta ones, but in my opinion, the not as nice looking jig titanium.
I actually kind of like
I know.
Gosh,
I don't like jig titanium.
This thing is expensive. I'm surprised. Is it?
Yeah, that's why I was really surprised when it was going.
Well, that's why I'm saying, it's $280. That is around. It could be a little bit more even than the production chamois. I'm like, if this sold out, then I'm pretty sure the more hyped chamois with less numbers made is going to sell out. Like, I'm pretty
I honestly think it's going to be kind of like Crew Carta to a degree.
It's going to be gross. The secondary market scalping.
Bad. They're probably going to double for sure.
Yeah, definitely. This thing's really cool looking.
They're doing another version of the micarta Shaman. I don't know what steel they're going to use yet, but
I mean, they could use Z-Wear. It's literally the same thing as Crewwear, but it would technically be a new sprint.
If they do another color, I may jump on it and just sell this one. I don't mind it. I love the knife, but that like brown isn't my favorite.
Oh, the Shaman? Yeah. I'm personally not even a fan of the Shaman. It just does. It's too big. It's too big.
You're really making me dislike you in this episode.
I
know, but I understand that. It
also
Shaman needs nub delete.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up, Brian. Was that the nub slaps into your finger? So,
okay, we don't want.
Did you snag one of those for yourself, Eric? The Shaman?
Did I keep one? No, I got less than I was expecting to get, so I just gave them all the customers that wanted them.
Yeah, that sucked. By the way, do you want to tell people what happened there?
Oh, it was so sought after that it couldn't make as many as as the market demanded, so just had to kind of scout some from distributors and wherever else to get as many as I could, but they were pretty hard to find.
Yeah.
I actually, I wanted to get one from you, but I had found out way too late. There were people like on a waiting list. You had said,
yeah, I had 30 people wanting them, like just on my list. And crazy.
I lucked out. There was a somewhat local place to me called Going Gear. They got in 4 of them. Wow. And they sat on their website. They didn't announce them at all, except in an Instagram story. Sat on their website for like an hour, and I managed to grab the last one.
Oh, that's crazy.
I know. I was like freaking out. When I contacted them to ask how many they had, and they said 4, I was like, "This is gonna be bad. This is a rough launch."
Yeah.
Gosh. So with that, it's probably time to move on to the homily of the day, knife collecting / making topic, preferences. So Brian, do you want to lead us off on how we're going to talk about this?
Yeah, so preferences is obviously a very broad term, but what we specifically want to talk about are not necessarily nitpicks, but just things that aren't critical to design that are sort of optional. So for example, it is not optional to not heat treat your knife, right? That's not a preference.
I mean,
whatever. But generally speaking, we accept that a knife has to be heat treated. It needs to have an edge. Those aren't preferences. But what our preferences are things like, tip up versus tip down carry. Do you like Dropshot action, or do you like slower hydraulic action like a Shabazz? Do you like hollow grinds or flat grinds? Stuff like that. Those are what we consider to be preferences. So I think we just want to talk about what our preferences are and sort of explain why we have those preferences.
Mm-hmm.
And then also go into a little bit about why it matters how we think of other people's preferences, like how we should treat people who have preferences that are different from us.
Yeah.
So that's sort of...
treat them like scum.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think I'll start off with my preferences on knives and kind of what I guess look for and what I end up liking. I mean, we'll start with the basics. I mean, obviously, I'm always a tip up. I'm the purist. If you're a collector in the knife community, if you're not carrying tip up, there's people say there's something wrong with you. So
or they'll get mad at makers, right? They'll be like, how could you not make this tip up?
Yeah, like the full size Spyderco military, I think, is only tip down, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know, I prefer tip up personally. I don't even know if there's really a big reason why. It's just the main reason why is because it keeps the blade out of the way of my hand in the pocket, so whatever. Not big deal for me, really, because I wear sweatpants a lot, so I'm not, I have big pockets, but I prefer tip up. In terms of drop shutty versus hydraulic, I guess it varies. Drop shut, so this Suru, right? It's action, even though it's on bearings, it actually does feel hydraulic, I guess because of the high lock bar tension. So it's not really falls shutty at all. Of course, when I try to demonstrate for myself, it falls shut that one time, but it's not really that falls shutty at all. So in this knife I like a lot, but I guess typically I fall towards the drop shut actions, especially the PM2, just how it, a compression lock, when you release the lock and it falls shut, there's nothing more satisfying. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to tip up versus tip down then, and I guess we can just talk about each thing.
No,
right?
that's fair.
So is everyone kind of tip up here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I am tip up too. All of my knives are tip up carry. That being said, the reason why I put it as the first thing to discuss is because, like you mentioned, the Spyderco Military, that is a tip down only knife. Mm-hmm. A lot of people with bigger hands like the Spyderco Military, and they have complained to Spyderco saying, why tip down? Tip up is the only way.
Yep.
And so when Darth came over to my house to do the electrical work on my oven, he let me try out his military. And so I put it in my pocket, and I was like, wait a second, tip down is better here. Like for this one knife, in this specific case, tip down was just better. And
Why
the reason
was that?
So the reason is because, like you said, in most cases, the blade is not going to open in your pocket with a strong enough D10, right?
Right.
But when you pull it out and it's tipped down on the military, it's so big, and so imagine your index finger and your thumb on the pivot. When you pull it out, it's right next to the spidey hole. So you just
instead of you having to like readjust your grip.
You don't need to readjust your grip. So it is faster to deploy that way. Much easier. You don't need to like move the knife in your grip at all. So it's actually way more efficient.
That actually makes a lot of sense because I'm thinking about like just with the Suru, like pulling it out of my pocket. It's so small that obviously I can basically immediately get to the hole or the flipper, but I can see with the military it being so big that it might be more beneficial to have it tip down.
Right, and so many people love the military, and I think that might be part of the reason why is that in their daily use, it's so easy for them to deploy. Like, just pull it out of your pocket, your hand's already in the perfect position, and you just flick it open. So this is one of the reasons why I think it's important for people to have a reason for their preferences, not just copy, popular YouTube personalities. And
actually, I wanted to kind of touch on that because I feel like a lot of people when they get in the hobby, even like myself, I feel like you start watching the big knife YouTubers like Nick Shabazz and
like me.
Yeah, exactly. You start watching Jacob. No, I feel like everyone starts off now with like Nick Shabazz because he's so big now that it's just like
that's where I started.
And I think a lot of people, they kind of model their views on what is a good aspect of a knife based on what Nick Shabazz tells them. And that's not Nick Shabazz's fault. It's just Nick is saying what he likes about a knife. And you're kind of being impressioned to like those same things by watching those videos, So, I don't know.
I have not watched Nick Shabazz's Spyderco military review. But I have seen other videos where he has just said tip-up is the only way. So I'm going to assume that he said that's a bad thing about the military. But like I said, I haven't watched it yet. Because, it just wasn't a knife I was interested in at the time.
Right.
So
the reason I don't like the tip down thing is just, especially when I'm trying to choke up on a knife, I really don't want anything right there near the pivot, like where I'm trying to get my fingers up to.
Yeah.
So I've owned a couple that have been tip down for sure. One of my favorites is the CRKT Fulcrum 2. Really cool opening mechanism, really slim knife, but I couldn't like choke up on it very well because that clip kept getting in the way, and I didn't feel like taking it off, so it left. But in some cases, like you said with the military, it makes more sense that way.
Yeah. So definitely that like makers need to keep all of that in mind. Like what's easier to access once you take it out of the pocket, what's still comfortable when you're gripping it, right? Because if maybe tip up does make it too bulky in the area where your index finger is going to be like wrapping around the handle, that's possible too. So definitely a lot of interesting things there, but I don't think it's as black and white as people are, have been saying for a long time.
No, it shouldn't be definitive. It's become kind of a joke almost.
Yeah,
the whole,
it really has.
I mentioned, like you're just wrong if you sit down.
Exactly.
It's not that you're wrong. I just think that you should try out both and go from there.
Yeah. Right, and here's another thing. So if you looked at the Alliance video where they were showing off the Slim Pickens, there was another knife that they also showed. That was sort of like very thin and narrow. I don't know what the name was, but it was tip down only. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting because it's probably not going to sell. Just based on that.
I think that definitely affects like purchasing decisions.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do a tip down carry knife in this, I don't know, meta, we'll call it, you need to explain yourself. You need to convince people. Yeah, you need to have a really good reason. Right? You cannot just throw it on there and hope people figure it out themselves because they are not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Like
the CRKT CEO, like they gave a reason for it. I still disagree with that reason, but they gave a reason for it, and they kind of got away with it. But yeah, you kind of need to explain yourself nowadays.
That also mainly pertains to collectors. I feel like a lot of like people that just walk into Walmart and buy a Spyderco Tenacious that's like,
oh, they don't care.
Like it starts out like tip down or whatever. They don't care. They don't know which would be better, So
I actually have a friend who he's kind of into some knives, and I've given him a few, but he actually prefers tip down. He's complained about tip up carry like pocket clips on knives before, and he's never given me a reason. I'll have to ask him, but I found that very odd.
It's probably,
and in some ways that could be more legitimate because he's probably just using the knife as a person would use their knife and realizing, oh, there are some flaws. Whereas for us, we're so conditioned to think that tip up is the only way that we don't blame the tip up, but we'll blame something else for us being frustrated,
Well,
we just need to stop putting pocket clips on knives and stop making them folding and just start carrying fixed.
Start making them magnets.
Actually, Jacob, it might be because that your friend just likes the likes what he's used to. Like maybe he's
that's what my assumption is, because he's very much used to like flea market gas station knives.
Yeah.
So him getting,
he's like, why is
even though
I
gave him like a better knife,
down?
he just doesn't. Yeah, he didn't like it.
Yeah, I've always been curious why the PM2 comes tipped down from the factory. I mean, you can switch it around, obviously, but I always end up pretty much every time I sell one in the shop flipping it around for whoever's buying it.
Yeah,
because the PM2, at least for me, is a fine size to like pull out of the pocket and deploy. If you have smaller hands, I guess, but they make the PM3 for that.
I'm not sure what Spyderco's like thought process is on that, because they sell a ton of production knives. Like, so for example, the Shaman isn't the Shaman 4-way carry. Like you could,
yep.
And that comes tip up, right?
Yes, mine.
Yeah,
did,
I'm pretty
least.
sure everyone comes tip up. So I wonder why some come, like they're coming from the same Golden, Colorado factory. So I'm wondering why some are tip up and some are tip down.
I'm actually
it's the internal struggle within the company.
Yeah.
What if the Shaman's more geared towards like knife collectors and the PM2 is more geared towards
that's probably
people who use their knives?
I don't know of any non-collector that picked up a Crucarda shop.
Yeah, okay,
that is
fair.
You are almost guaranteed to be right there. I'm pretty sure you're right there. Like, they probably realize that it's less like finicky people who are going for the paramilitary too, and so they're like, it'd be hilarious if the base paramilitary 2 came tip down, but the sprints and exotic steels came tip up.
That'd be a really good like tongue-in-cheek thing.
That would actually be so funny, but I don't know. I don't buy those. So,
so I guess let's all talk about the Dropshot and hydraulic thing. What's you guys' preference? Because you already know mine.
Mine is Dropshot, but mostly because if I'm using a knife and I care about the closing at all, I'm using it one-handed, and I may not always be in a position to close it, but it's not a massive preference. I have both.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can probably still close one-handed,
I know, it's just quicker usually if I can like shake it instead of like having to close it with my index finger, which is normally how I do it. So it's a very slight thing in my opinion. Like I said, I own both. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
For me, I actually enjoy both in terms of how they feel. I enjoy them equally. So what it comes down to is I think Dropshot is obviously faster, right? It's just closing faster. So if I can Dropshot safely, so like a compression lock or an axis lock, and my fingers are out of the way, I love Dropshot. Like that's just 100% of the time it should be Dropshot if my fingers are not in the way. For a knife that I'm just playing with, I don't care if my fingers are in the way or not, so Dropshot or hydraulic are both okay. But for a knife that I am working with, it has to be hydraulic close. It can't be Dropshot, assuming my fingers are in the way. Like so if I'm working with it and my fingers are in the way, like I have to like move a lock bar or something, in that case, I can't do Dropshot. Like I just can't.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. If I'm like working in with like a liner lock or frame lock knife, I don't want it to slam shut on my fingers, but I'm normally doing stuff with compression locks anyway, so I don't really do that too much. But I could definitely see that.
Yeah, like for example, my neon.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, Eric, what about you?
I'd say probably Dropshot just 'cause it's more fun to fidget with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I don't know. I'm so used to closing them, like just kind of on my nail whenever I go to close them anyway. So like frame locks that it doesn't.
Yeah.
If they drop shut, if it hits my nail, it's not gonna.
A lot of them
I
do
do
hit
feel
your
like
nail.
custom-
Customer
so it's not gonna
preference
cut me.
leaning that way too.
Yeah, I think there's a point where people have gotten to where they're just okay with their nails getting scratched, so they just don't care anymore, which is fine. Like, if you don't care, then I think that's perfectly fine. Because there is a safe way to close a drop shut knife, and if you let it hit your nail, that's 100% safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It
and
still
like,
freaks me
carry my
out.
562 quite a bit, and the flipper tab comes and hits, and that's the first thing that hits, and then you can get your thumb out of the way, and it's just fine.
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, I actually want to ask the same question that Jacob did. Is there like customer preference, you think, Eric? Like, do you see, like, people that come to the shop, do they prefer one way or the other?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I did have one, like, there was probably a 10 or 12-year-old kid that came in with his dad one time, and he was looking at some, like, decent, $50 to $100 knives for his first knife, and I forget what I was showing him, but he's like, I think I'm going to go with this one, and his dad was like, well, what do you like more about that one? He goes, I like the way it drops shut.
Oh no!
About lost it.
That's interesting because there was no external influence. I'm assuming.
Yeah, it was
so it's
like first knife.
They're getting him at a young age. This is
he secretly watches Nick Shabazz.
Are they
at
called
home.
the Zoomers?
Oh, God.
Is that a thing?
What, Zoomers?
Aren't they called the Zoomer generation?
Yeah.
I am well, technically.
Yes, it is Generation Z.
I am technically a Zoomer. Actually, it's my
What?
age. Yeah, I am a Zoomer. Technically, I'm
Wait,
20
what?
years.
I thought we
Was
were
it
all
like-
millennials.
I'm
here.
20 years
Wait,
old.
hold
Moving
up.
up now or something.
I'm 20 years old. The kids nowadays that are born after 2010 are Generation Alpha. They're the
Wait,
ones
what's the cutoff for a Zoomer?
Which means Omega's up next.
the cutoff is basically like 15 to 20 years, so it's like 95 to 2010 is
Wait, what?
is Gen Z.
Wait, hold up. I'm 96.
Yeah, so you're probably a Zoom.
I'm
You're
a
on the
Zoomer?
cusp. You're on the cusp of being
Oh my
a Zoomer
god, no,
and
I'm a
millennial.
Zoom in the other direction. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tangent, but it is interesting.
Yeah, it says 1981 to 1996 is millennial. So
Yeah.
and the Gen Z is
Yeah.
below that.
Yeah,
I like the way it zooms shut.
Yeah, so that kid was
no.
probably
And then he just
between
dabs.
Zoomer. He's probably closer to an alpha than a Zoomer.
Yeah,
But still.
alright.
God, I'm old.
It makes sense, the boomers, they like to slowly open it with the nail nick, and then the zoomers like to zoom shut.
Oh gosh.
This is a bit of a tangent, but quick shout out to Cedric and Ada, Gear and Outdoors. Pete, if you haven't watched his Buck 110 like Uncle Randy review, go watch it real quick. It's so good.
I haven't watched it yet, but I do really
Go
enjoy
watch it, man.
I really do enjoy
Gosh.
Cedric's videos.
He's so funny.
Very fun. Even he's reviewed like his cats, I think, and
Yes,
in
Basil.
extreme detail, which is very interesting. I mean, that's how he is. But getting back on track, let's move on to like hollow versus flat grind. Personally, I could care less about this. I don't really have a big preference. I have all kinds of flat or hollow grind knives. Like,
Hollow ground's the only way to go. If you like flat grinds, you're definitely wrong.
Flat is justice.
Knew Brian was going to say that. No, I have both too. I have no preference really either way. As long as it cuts, I'm
yeah,
okay.
like, I mean, I'm not like Brian probably has cut more cardboard than I have and ever will in my entire life. So like, he's more of a cutter. Like, I mean, I don't know. I use my knives, like I cut open Amazon boxes every now and then, and I open packaging on things, but
I break down cardboard, but I again, not nearly as much as he does. He just does it for testing. I just do it for practicality.
Yeah, I break down cardboard when I need to, but it's not like I have.
Yeah, it's not like an everyday
It's not like
thing.
I have 100 feet of triple layered cardboard just sitting around that I'm gonna start cutting through to.
I thought all knife guys had
what
100 feet of AAA.
just sitting around.
Yeah, just like in the storage closet.
But there are some arguments that I want to address on this category. Just because I think there's a bit of like arguing in bad faith and misinformation going around with respect to hollow versus flat. Specifically, so something, for example, like, so I prefer flat, but I'm not going to crap on hollow because I cut with both, and they both perform pretty well depending on the, you know, the use case and like the BTE and all that. But like, you know, sometimes what people will say is, hey, hollow is not good because you know how there are shoulders?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the material will bunch up at the shoulders, and that will, you know, cause binding. That's the argument. And I believe
That's
that.
such a weak
well,
argument.
I believed it for a long time because it made sense physically. I was like, okay, that makes sense. There's a sudden increase in width. Maybe, yeah, sure, whatever. I mean, you know, the YouTubers are telling me it's true, so it must be true.
Right.
Then, you know, I actually cut stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm having zero problem cutting things.
Exactly. Like most of it, the slope of it just pushes the material to the side.
Right. It never even touches.
I have never had it like bunch up on the shoulders of a hollow grind.
Right.
No,
so,
yeah. I mean, it's not going to be like, I don't know. At that point, when you're cutting like through cardboard like that, like when it's up at the spine of the blade, it's already acting like a wedge, you know, like,
Yeah, basically it's so wide there anyway.
yeah. So regardless of it being a hollow or a flat grind, it's not really going to make that much of a noticeable difference between, you know, the cutting performance.
Yeah.
You know,
No, for sure. And the other argument I've heard is, well, you can't cut an apple with a hollow grind. And that's kind of true, but that's like, to some extent, that's like, yes, the flat will cut better than the hollow for an apple and, you know, some foods. That being
But if
said,
you're cutting an apple, it's not like you're doing super hardcore cutting anyway, does it really?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's such an occasional thing, if anything, and it's not like the hollow can't do it. I just don't know, how many apples are you cutting? Like, you just
I mean, yeah. I guess it's a situational thing. If you're talking about for like folding knives, then probably not that many that it matters.
Right. Like, how many times do you pick out your Medford and you need to cut some apples, and you're like,
God.
well, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just don't see it. I
heard,
don't think it's an honest argument.
One thing I've heard is that, and Brian, you may be able to correct me or, you know, tell me if I'm right on this. Hollow grinds will stay thinner behind the edge for longer as far as sharpening them.
Yes.
But of course, flat grinds are normally slightly more durable and less likely to chip or break.
Yeah. There's definitely more edge stability behind a flat grind because there's more material supporting the edge. But when you sharpen it, it'll increase in thickness faster. So
that makes sense.
It is genuinely just a trade-off. It is not one is better than the other. It is, do you want longevity for your knife in terms of sharpening, or do you want it for the shorter term to just perform better? Because a flat grind will, like, so I've done some testing on this before, but basically a flat grind at a lower BTE or a lower behind the edge thickness is going to be tougher than a hollow grind at the same behind the edge thickness, obviously, right? Because there's less material supporting it. But that goes like, for let's not give, I'm not going to give an exact number because it depends on the steel and the HRC and all that. But for an example, like, let's say 5 thousandths behind the edge flat grind versus a 12 thousandths behind the edge hollow grind, they will be approximately the same amount tough, and, you know, the same amount of impact resistance. But because it's 5 thou, you know, the flat grind will cut better. But as you use it over time, that 5 thou flat grind will become a 12 thou flat grind, and at that point, the hollow grind will still be 12 thou and will start outperforming the flat grind.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's how I see it. Is that it's the flat grind is more of a time bomb, but like a very effective time bomb, and the hollow is more of like a consistent, like, here's your performance, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you can negate some of that too if you're, you know, cautious in how you sharpen. You're not taking off a ton of material.
Right, and obviously for a flat grind,
like
you can also regrind and stuff like that too. Same as you can do with hollow. So you can argue that if you're going to regrind as well, then the flat grind is always just going to be better. So there's that as well. But I definitely think it's more of an opinion-based thing than a actual, like, oh, hollow grinds bunch up and bind, so they're just bad, you know. So
yeah, I think all of these topics that we're covering are really good because they're all down to preference. There's no black and white here. Even on the next topic, the steel, there's no right or wrong answer necessarily.
Yeah, there really isn't.
Yeah.
And you know that super well, Brian, because you work with people requesting these steels and
right.
buying
And
them, stuff like that.
it's so sweet because when it comes to steel, like especially Christmas is coming up, so a lot of my orders are Christmas gifts. Okay.
Yeah.
And so people will say, "Oh, I want to get my husband or my friend or whatever a really nice knife. Can you give me some advice on the steel?" And obviously, they come thinking that they have to spend a lot on the steel in order to get a good steel.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, you can there's some in different ways, some steels that are cheaper will actually outperform much more expensive steels.
Right.
Yeah, it depends on the use
Right,
case.
exactly. So I tell them, hey, there are trade-offs, and you don't actually have to spend this much money to get a nice knife, for your special person. A good example of that is with chef knives. Actually, probably the best example is chef knives because a lot of chef knives today use 440C.
Right.
Yeah.
And 440C is this is a topic for another day, but I just think the chef knife market is the biggest scam.
It is because the steels are I've been looking for good kitchen knives. They're all crap.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't. And the thing
steels
is,
are
they
just
could.
garbage.
Yeah, and the steel doesn't even need to be that expensive. You can spend $5 to $10 on AEBL.
You can get exactly ABL, or if you want to go a little bit higher, LC200N.
Yep.
But 440C on a $300 kitchen knife is insane.
Yeah, and so I'll tell them, oh, well, you definitely don't want 440C, right? You definitely do not want that.
Yeah.
That being said, you also don't need Van X, just
right.
for a casual gift, right? We can find a happy, not even a medium, but lower than a medium that is still good, and that would be AEBL, which is equivalent to 14C28N, which is a Sandvik steel. That steel, it's not going to hold an edge as long as your super steels, but it's going to take a very fine edge because it has a lot of edge stability, and it's very cheap, and it's very stainless. So it's still a very good steel for kitchen knives. So
yeah, so if someone gets this as a gift, they're not into knives, that's a perfect steel for them.
Right, and
It's easy
even
to
if they're into
sharpen,
knives,
it won't
I would be
rust.
happy with an AEBL kitchen knife. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, will it hold an edge as long as LC200N, which is a little bit more? No, but at that point, price is a factor, right? You'd be paying maybe $20 more. And that's fine if you want to pay that, right? My mom, I had her using an ABL kitchen knife that I made for 2 years, and now she's using an LC200N one. And even she notices, I didn't tell her the steel was different or anything. She was like, oh, this one stays sharper longer. And I was like, yeah,
That's interesting.
because it does, right? It's just, that's how it is.
Yeah.
So
that whole kitchen
Now
knives.
make her one in Van.
yeah.
That whole kitchen knives, that they use bad steels. That's a whole debate we could get into for a long time. I feel just talking about because it's a very saturated market of crap steels.
We should try to get Frogger on and talk about kitchen knives for
definitely.
As far
I
as
think, what do they use for Victorinox chef knives? I can't remember what blade steel they use for those.
Gosh, if you hadn't said it, I could have told you. It's a weird name. Hold on.
I can find it right now. It's the one you want to look for is the Victorinox.
It's like
Fibrox.
Fibrox.
Let me find that's the name of the knife. Let me find the steel.
I don't do a ton of cooking, so I've got an 8-inch Victorinox at home, and it works decent for whatever I need to.
You probably have the.
I've heard really good stuff about the Victorinox knives.
Did you say you have an 8-inch Victorinox?
Yeah.
You probably have the Fibrox.
Yeah, it is.
It is the Fibrox? Okay, well, I don't know
Yep.
what steel it is. Let me see.
I know, I was trying to look it up, I couldn't find it, but
I can't
for somebody
find
that's
anything on it.
just wants a
Well, it is stainless
kitchen knife,
steel.
they're used to Chicago cutlery and stuff. That's usually what I recommend.
I've heard really good stuff about the Victorinox kitchen knives, actually.
if I had to guess, it's either VG10 or 440.
It's definitely not VG10. It's definitely not
No?
VG10. No,
So
it's only
440?
$30.
Oh, 440.
It might be lower than 440C actually. Because it says dishwasher safe, so
Mm-hmm. That's another good preference for chef knives and stuff like that. Is for the steel categories, or even just handles and whatever. What material you want it? Do you want to be able to dishwash it or not? That's
I found the steel. It's
dishwashing stuff.
Oh my god. Okay, this is the steel. X50CRMOV15.
Oh, that's some cutting edge stuff. No pun
Sounds
intended.
like a very high quality steel that I want in every folder that I own.
But hey, I mean, that's the thing though. Like, it still works for a lot of people. You know?
No, yeah,
I
that
mean, you just got to picture like how much you're using. Certainly, if I'm something that I use all day, every day, go for something higher end. But for
Yeah, of
that
course.
price
Like
range,
if you're a professional chef, you're looking at something with an extra zero behind it. But for just home use, that's going to be fine. It's going to be great, better than most people's current knives, I'm sure.
in comparison to what most people have, they'll have their Chicago cutlery or whatever.
Yeah, I think. Or
Walmart brand stuff that's just garbage.
Most people are using like Faberware, and even that is like big. That's big to them. Like my family's knives back home, that it's like god awful steel. It's like I could. What?
The ones we have here currently are just trash. I hate them so much.
You could snap it in half. It's like they're not sharp. They don't keep an edge. They're just crap. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I hate trying to even sharpen some of those like just really crappy kitchen knives.
No, it's like
it's a.
Oh yeah,
pain.
that's the thing. It's actually harder to sharpen a bad steel than a decent steel.
It's a fruitless
endeavor.
endeavor.
I've sharpened mine
sharpener
a few times, and it sharpens up nicely.
Yeah. I don't even understand some pull through sharpeners. Some of them are scams. Like I remember going to my grandma's house, and this is before I really know anything about knives, but like to sharpen her knives, they used like this pull through sharpener, but it was literally, I don't really think this. It's okay. So it's this tiny little like kind of like matchbox sized plastic piece with two wobbly, just quarter sized metal wheels, and that's that's the sharpener. I'm there's no way it's doing anything but dulling the knife. It's not even held at a consistent angle because the wheels are so wobbly. They literally just wobbled around like.
Oh no!
On every axis, so like
so it looks like a factory grind.
Yeah,
God!
So when you would pull it through the wheel, like imagine the wheels are like both vertical and like facing each other. Like when you pull it through, the wheels would turn in. So like they're scraping against it's not doing anything.
Well, it is doing something.
Well, it's doing something, but God, I don't know. It's just a funny tangent I thought I'd share.
Yeah, well, that's inspiring me to start an even larger tangent. So, on the topic of bad pull-through sharpeners, have you guys heard of Catra Sharp?
Nope.
No.
So, well, I mentioned Catra to you guys before, but you know how? Yeah. What does that stand for? Just for our viewers, let me find that real quick. So, Catra stands for the Cutlery Allied Trades Research Association. So basically they do research on cutlery, right? On edge retention, HRC, stuff like that. So one of the things that is supposed to be good about Catra is that they're supposed to be completely scientific. So minimal human involvement. So like, how criticism of cut tests is like a person will like cut cardboard at varying amounts of pressure and stuff like that, because it's a human hand. So the Catra machine, it has a knife that's held by a robot arm, and it just moves it back and forth as it cuts silicone impregnated cardstock. And that's how they determine how much was cut. So the pressure is always the same.
Huh. Interesting.
And that's cool. But their Catra Sharp machine is literally a pull-through sharpener that's operated by a human being. So it's like what you said, except like a little bit more advanced, where it's like the sharpener and then two wheels, and you just pull it through the wheels.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, I don't even know what to think about the results. I should give context, but basically the community funded Alchemy One, his name is Clint, to send 4 knives to Catra for testing. It costs like $600. Just to test the knives.
Oh, gosh.
That's expensive for just to test knives. And so he got Rockwell tests, Vickers tests, and the cutting test. And when they came back, the knives, the edges were all wobbly, or like some knives became recurves from how bad the sharpening was. There were Rockwell tests like in random places, like on laser engravings, which you can't do it on, or on the primary bevel, which if you know anything about Rockwell tests, you can't do it on the primary bevel because it's a slope. and you have to do a Rockwell test on a flat surface. So all this improper testing was done, and so I think that
I remember seeing that in the Discord and being just flabbergasted at just what it looked like, like all the random like Rockwell testing points, even on the primary grind, just wild.
Now, the reason I bring that up is because we're talking about steel, right?
Yep.
And when you think about how people develop their preferences on what steel they like, the reality is that most people did not take every single steel at different hardnesses and cut tests with them, right? Like your average consumer does not have the time or the money to do that. So what they do is they either listen to what the companies say, or they listen to what YouTube reviewers who have used those knives at the purported steel and hardness, what they say.
Yep.
Now the reason I bring up Catra is because companies send their knives to Catra for testing, and that's how they decide. M390 at 56 HRC is good. So that's how that decision is made. They send it to Catra, and the shady thing is that when you send knives to Catra, they destroy them after. They don't send them back to the companies.
Interesting.
So when you think about it that way, it's like, I don't blame the companies. Well, they should be a little bit more like, hey, we want to see the knives and verify the results, in my opinion. But I don't blame the company for any shady business. Mm-hmm. But for Catra, I'm looking at them and I'm like, I think they're the reason why so many companies think their knives are good when they're not.
Yeah, I can see that. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so maybe your Spyderco, you send your knives to Catra. You do like 58 HRC LC200N, and in order to make you happy, Catra says, "Oh, your results are great," and then they destroy the knives. And then Spyderco will tell the forum people, "Hey, we spent a lot of money on testing, and the results came back good." Right? Perfectly honest on the part of Spyderco, in my opinion. But for us end users, we're not getting a good knife.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that that's important to keep in mind when you're looking at your preferences, is who are you getting your information from? Even if the people you get information from are trustworthy themselves, maybe they got their information from people who aren't honest and trustworthy, right? Because I think the world of Sal, for example, of Spyderco, I think he's a perfectly stand-up dude, and I love Spyderco as a company, and I have Spyderco knives. But, do I trust Catra results that they have? Hell no. Right?
Everyone's still a person, and people anyone can have extreme misperceptions about things. And, a lot of people might pick up their preferences from those people that have misperceptions. So, I guess the best thing to say is just, take everything with a grain of salt and be skeptic sometimes.
I think that's 100% what people have to do. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think the last thing people should do, because, one of the things that comes with talking about preferences is how we develop them, right?
Yeah.
I think people need to avoid, going on Blade forums or going on, like a random thread somewhere and just seeing what people say anecdotally about steels based on what they heard companies and, YouTube reviewers say, because it's just not verified information.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like you can be the most stand-up YouTube reviewer, right? Like the most honest, trustworthy person. But just because you're trustworthy doesn't mean you can't give bad information, right? Like I do it sometimes too, right? I've said before I was wrong about what did I say earlier that I was wrong about? Said it somewhere.
Everything.
Something. Oh, hologrinds. I said I was wrong about hologrinds and how they bind, right? I genuinely believed that they binded. So I told people that, but I happened to be wrong, right? And I wasn't lying or trying to lie. It's just that that's what I genuinely believed.
It was a misperception.
It was a misperception.
Yep.
So I think that happens with YouTube reviewers, right? They get a knife, they are told by the company that it's whatever HRC, then they test it and they say, at this HRC, this knife is poo-poo, right? But it could be that it's not even that HRC, right? Like you don't even know. So it wasn't independently Rockwell tested, right? So I mean. That was the point of this topic, I guess, just to tell people, preferences, they are somewhat subjective. They need to be based on objective fact, though, right? And we need to be careful how we develop them and be open to changing our minds, basically.
Yeah.
So, Yeah.
Okay.
So how should we treat people who are new to the hobby?
Well, I don't think it's, wrong necessarily to share your preferences with someone new to the hobby, right?
Yeah, just explain why you like the things you do. When you do it, don't just tell them like, "Hey, hollow grinds are better than flat grinds." Just they always are. Make sure to explain yourself and maybe see what their use case is and make possible recommendations or something like that. And answer as many questions as you can, because there's a lot of questions when you start in this hobby and you realize how deep it goes. At least for me, there were a lot of things that I had no idea about.
Yeah.
I think the best thing to do is if someone enters a forum or a thread or a Discord server or whatever, and they say, "Hey, I'm new. What should I do about this?" People, they jump to answering, right? They'll be like, "Oh, you should buy this or you should buy that. This is better than this." And I think the first thing that people should do is to ask questions back. Like, what is your use case, right? What is your budget? What is what kind of things do you like doing with your knives, right? Like, what do you expect from your knives?
No, yeah, that's actually a very good point. A very good difference between subreddits like Knife Club and something like I don't know, r/build a PC or r/ that's a good example. There's a lot of people in the PC community that are like, they're like, I'm building a computer. What processor should I buy, or how much RAM should I get? And a lot of times, at least I've noticed in those subreddits, people start out with, well, what are you using it for? Are you using it for hardcore gaming, or are you using it for productivity? And if so, this is what you should buy. This is what processor you should get.
Yeah, they'll make them like a whole build list. And
exactly.
It's perfectly suited to what they need in their budget. Didn't do that with knives.
People post on r/knife club or r/knives or something. They're like, hey, I'm new to the hobby. I don't know what I should get. What knife should I get that is around $100? And then blah, 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 blah. Everybody starts typing.
Shouting out suggestions.
Randomly upvoting some comments, downvoting other comments. Like,
And that's what happens. And that's...
And every time I see those threads, I never see the question asking person as the top comment, right? Trying to get more information,
they're at the bottom and they don't have an answer.
Yeah. So I think we need to be more on the you're right. The question asking side of things, where we're saying, what's your use case for this knife? Or like why do you want this knife? Or like if someone says like, I want $100 knife, around $100, we should say, well, what would you use it for? Or like, what are your state laws or carry restrictions or whatever? Ask questions.
And also realize that the way you ask questions is really important. It's the same as like if you ever did like the science of conducting surveys, right? How you ask a question influences how people answer, right?
Oh, definitely.
So one thing you shouldn't ask is, do you care about corrosion resistance? Like who?
Because they're gonna say
any new person is gonna, you know what I mean? But like,
if anything, be like, hey, do you work in places where steel rusts regularly or something like that? Don't.
Right. Or do you ever leave your knife in places where it might be wet or humid? Right.
Yeah. Are you gonna put them in the dishwasher?
Yeah. Like basic questions. So I think people need to just we're a community, and we're a small community where we always enjoy when people join it, right? And when it grows. And so the best way to do that is to, I'm not a person who dates, but like even when you're dating, right? You, instead of talking about what you like all the time, you should ask what the person who's, new likes, right? And what their preferences are, and sort of go based on
or you're
that.
not going to find if you're compatible. Same thing with the knives. If they don't have those questions asked, they may buy something. Like I've asked before about knife stuff, and a ton of times I got Benchmade 940. Just go buy the 940.
And then I bought it.
I've tried the 940 several times, and I don't like it.
I bought the 940 so many times. I have one right now. Actually, I bought another one.
I can't stand them. They're just not for me.
Well,
but they're so popular in the community that
you get recommended it so often. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Constantly. Same thing with PM2.
And the thing is, at the time that I was recommended the 940, I've always been into blades, right? Blade geometry. So it was like, terrible for me at the time. Then, now I'm like, well, I'll just regrind it. So it's different now. Now it's a different knife because I don't have the same problem with it as I did before. So, but definitely at the time, I told people I really care about knives that cut well. Here's them that get the 940, get the 940. I'm like, okay.
So this is probably a good time to finally get to the meat and potatoes of the guest topic. Because Eric's been a little silent this podcast, so
I'm sorry.
Now it's time. Now it's time for him to
just kind of feeling it out.
Now it's time for Eric to have this true spotlight, right? So I think the best place to start would be, Eric, how did you kind of come into the knife world, and what made you want to start selling knives?
Well, I've always carried a pocket knife with me ever since I was a kid. Just kind of got used to the utility aspect of it. Went to college and became a police officer, and did that for a little while and decided it wasn't for me. And so I was looking for a business to open up, and I was like, well, there's not really any higher end knife stores in my area. And so just kind of did it on a whim. Before then, I wasn't even really a huge collector of knives. I mean, I had a few that I carried, namely like the Kershaw Knockout is one of the big ones that got me really into knives. And got like a Benchmade auto triage whenever I used to work for the police department. And then, just kind of opened it up on a whim.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, what knife did you carry first? What was the first?
The Kershaw Knockout.
Oh, okay, cool.
I carried that for probably 5 years solid.
Wow.
Once they first came out. And
so you used to work in, did you say police department? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I worked for Indiana University's police department.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
So they did they did a program to where in between my junior and senior year, I went through the 15-week academy, and then my senior year worked part-time there, and then I worked there full-time a little while after.
And so Indiana Knives, is that like because it's the state of Indiana?
Pretty much, yeah. Looking back now, it's kind of hard to know whether I'd pick the same name or not. I just thought it was kind of recognizable for if people are searching for a place to get knives in Indiana, but like it's daily where I guess like, so do you make all of these knives? Like in the shop, and I have like 50 different brands in there. It's like, no, I just sell and sharpen.
So how long have you been working at Indiana Knives? Like, how long have you had the business?
Yeah, I opened my shop up just about 2 years ago.
Oh wow, really? It's only been 2 years? Gosh.
Yep.
I mean, I guess I've only been collecting for a few years, but like.
Yeah, that's about how long I've been into it. But I've seen your company mentioned so many times, especially when I was starting out on Reddit. There's just like a really good reputation there for you. And
it's because
that's one of the main ways that I got into selling knives online was just through Reddit and just participating through there, because I've been on Reddit for years and years, and so it was just kind of a natural place for me to go.
It's because Eric sees you commenting on posts. Like I remember when I was very first into knives, and Eric, all of a sudden I get a DM from Indiana Knives, and he's like, hey, I saw you like this knife. I have it in stock at Indiana Knives. Check it out.
And the prices are like too good to turn down most of the time.
Yeah, they are really good prices.
It's kind of a fine line with Reddit too, because I always hate like the overt like advertising and stuff, especially because it's more of a a community-based place where I like to just get on there and scroll through stuff. But yeah, occasionally you'll see like overt advertising and people get kind of mad about it, which I understand.
I tried to advertise for this podcast, and it was I don't know, I only got 6 upvotes, and I think I got downvoted a lot. So
that's sad, because I'm one of the people that upvoted it.
And I think a lot of the Discord upvoted it too. So it's kind of sad. Oof. But it's really interesting. So you've only been in it for just like a few years. Wow. So how hard was it to break into the industry? Like, what kind of processes did you need to go through to, set up a shop?
Well, yeah, it's first business that I've ever opened, so it was definitely a learning experience, just trying to figure out what all needs to be done, and just what kind of, like, even setting up websites and stuff was just kind of a
Yeah.
completely new thing to me. But yeah, it was kind of just a gamble because it's hard to even know what like your margins and stuff are on knives before you like jump in head first and just open up a business. Like nobody will even talk to you if you just say, hey, I've been thinking about doing this. What's your background and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
But so kind of just had to jump in head first and learn it as I go.
So how did you start? Did you start by having contact with the company already, like, or did you start out selling like your own knives or like buying, I don't know, how did you start out?
So yeah, I opened up a small storefront in like downtown Bloomington, Indiana, basically set up that and was picturing it being more like 50-50 online sales versus in-store sales, but it's primarily online sales. I mean, it's just kind of how the market is for knives now. But yeah, it's just a little bit of a learning experience trying to, because mainly you have to have a storefront in order to become dealers for most brands. They won't even give you the time of day unless you already have an established business.
Yeah.
But,
so I presumed maybe that maybe you had to talk to a lot of dealers at like, I don't know, Blade Show or something like that and be like, hey, this is who I am. Look at all what I've done, to get like, maybe people sending you, like distributing to you. I know you have...
Yeah, mostly I just found some distributors online that I work through. It's same distributor that pretty much every major knife retailer uses. Once I found them, you just have to fill out all the paperwork in order to become a approved vendor of sorts. So yeah, you really just you have to have a storefront in order to even start getting into it. So it's you have to kind of work backwards in order to even figure out whether it's a viable market to be in.
That's interesting, because I think, especially for like places like you where it's primarily online sales, if you cut out that storefront, that's a lot of overhead removed for those businesses. But obviously that's not an option if they won't even, sell knives to you to
certainly.
That's really interesting.
And that's kind of
Plaza Cutlery.
I moved from...
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Sorry, what did you say?
I was thinking about something like, there's a shop. It was like the only store near my house, pretty much, for a long time, and now it's dead. But have you heard of Plaza Cutlery?
Nope.
I have not.
No, well, I don't know if they still have a storefront, but they used to have a big store, and then they moved completely online, and I was just wondering how they still get knives then.
Yeah, so mainly you have to have a storefront in order to dealers with specific brands, but you can still work with distributors even if you don't have a storefront. But you'll get a lot later access to anything new that comes out. Like,
I see.
Yeah, like or even if you get access to it at all. Like, for example, the Shaman Sprint that came out, there's no chance you would have gotten that without being a Spyderco dealer, essentially.
Also, another thing I want to point out, Brian, is this is just like personal knowledge, because like I talked to the owner of a dealer close to me back in my hometown, but basically like what he did, like he bought like he rented a property for the storefront, but he's basically not even there. Like he'll only come there if you like call him personally and ask him for a knife. Basically, the storefront is just it's
for show.
It's for show. Basically, like you can't really go in. It was always, he only was open on like Sundays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So like literally 3 hours. So and his sales, his was different though, because he mostly sold at blade shows and gun shows is where he did some distributing, and also flea markets for some reason. So he traveled a lot. So yeah, I think like Indiana said, it's like, I guess you just need a storefront, which is kind of interesting.
Yep. It's fun to run, but yeah, it is. It's a lot of time and mainly a lot of overhead involved with it, which is part of the reason I made the change and moved into a shop on the other side of Bloomington. knew a guy that owned the gun shop, and I was like, just came up to him one day and asked if I could take over a section of his showroom, and it's worked out pretty well since moved over there, and get more and more foot traffic just from people that are mildly interested in knives. And so it's worked out pretty decent because I was downtown and it was just a pain for parking and just trying to get people to find it and stuff. So, and I'd get a lot of random people that would be walking in and be like, oh, it's $200 for a pocket knife. Why would you ever spend $200 on a pocket knife? Type of thing. So
That sounds so annoying.
That's what a lot of people are like, though, you know?
Real quick, guys, I'm going to have to hop off on this one. But it was awesome to talk to you, Eric, and I look forward to listening to the end of this podcast as well. But thanks, guys.
All right, bye, Jake.
Yeah, so we'll finish this off with just a few more questions for Eric, and then we'll conclude. So yeah, that's actually really interesting. You're like, so when did you change shops? That was pretty recently.
Yeah, so I did that. Let's see, that would have been just probably a year and 3 months ago that I switched. So I just had a year lease that I was in downtown Bloomington. And yeah, it was just way more overhead than I was expecting. And yeah, just not as much prime foot traffic. Because I found that most of the people that come to my shop are coming specifically to visit me. Like I'll have people drive. I think the farthest I've had somebody drive is probably, I think he drove 4.5 hours each way.
Yeah, wow.
So, I mean, there's just not a whole lot of places that you can go and see higher end stuff.
Yeah, I know
around,
Frankie and Bird make kind of a little bit of a drive to see you.
Yeah, they're just up in Indy, so it's about an hour for them to come down.
I've done that before, though. I drove like 4 hours, I think, there and the 4 hours back from Plaza Cutlery.
So it's a shame too, because your original shop was very unique looking. Right.
Yeah, it was definitely a cool little building. I really liked it and put a bunch of work into it. It was just kind of in a weird spot tucked into downtown Bloomington. Yeah. So it just made a lot more sense to move out to the other side of town and focus on the online aspect of the business.
You probably get some residual gun enthusiast buyers too, right? Since you're in like you're sharing a shop now.
Definitely some overlap and interest. I mean, because I have people that come in specifically to visit me, and they go and check out American Arms inventory and stuff. So it works out well for the both of us.
So do you usually have a busy day when you're at the shop? Like what are your hours?
Totally random. So I do 11 to 5 Monday through Friday now. I used to do Saturdays, but it just became. I was having to take off for, weddings and stuff that I have to go see on weekends and stuff. So I just tried to keep my hours as consistent as possible and move to just Monday through Friday now. But it's just kind of hit or miss. Some days I'll be busy the whole day. Some days I'll talk to like 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
Just kind of depends.
That's really interesting.
So wait, for people like me who don't really know how dealers work, because I just don't know any other dealers. Like how do you decide which knives you get? Like, is that just, do you get to say no to certain knives and be like, I don't really want to stock that knife?
Generally I pick and choose everything that I want. It's not like they just send me stuff that I didn't order. So I just pick.
You get,
but yeah, after you
get like
place
a list,
your
right?
Opening order with them. Sorry,
you get like a list, right? Like you like check like how many knives you want and like of what model or something like that.
Kinda. It's different between every single brand.
Right.
Like ProTech, for example, they'll send me a list like once a month of what they have in stock, and I just send them an email back with what I want, and they'll let me know if they still have it in stock, vice versa.
Do they have a minimum? Like you have to get this many, or else you can't get any?
Yeah, it's different. Some places are 1,000, some places are 500. Just depends. Usually a dollar amount. They'll let you order less than that, but you have to pay shipping on top of it. So I generally try and meet minimums for everything.
Interesting. Brian, do you have any other questions for?
Oh,
Eric?
I want all the insider information. Okay, here. So, well, I just like when I look at so first of all, your website looks really nice, by the way. I always liked Indiana Knives website, but Eric's website. I call him Indiana Knives still in my head because that's what I see him on the Discord. So I look at all these knives and I always wonder, like, how do you decide which ones you're going to feature? Do you just do it based on how many people bought and just go, these are the ones that are popular based on what people bought? Like, what does featured mean?
A little bit just kind of on random. If it's just stuff that I kind of cherry pick, and if it's something new that I get in, I'll add to it. But yeah, with one of the aspects of running my business versus like a large retail, like, one of the giants in the knife industry, is working with what capital I have to work with. So I have to cherry pick which knives I'm going to stock. It's not like I just, have $1 million worth of inventory to work with and can order every single model. Like,
so
for
a lot of
weed,
that is
for
skill,
example,
right?
they may come out with a model, but they have 18 different colors of it. It's like I can't stock $250 knives just in slightly different tints of green. But so I have to kind of cherry pick what I like, and also have to go a little bit by the margins. There's some brands that I stock just because I like them, but they're not entirely feasible to stock price margin wise, but it varies widely brand by brand.
Would you say that's like a skill you have to develop as a dealer, like deciding which knives are going to be popular, or like which knives are going to be a big enough hit that you can sell them all?
Yeah, it's kind of like gambling a little bit. I mean, just in terms of knowing how much you should order, just trying to guess on whether this particular model is going to be super popular. Like the Carta Shaman that we keep going back to, it's just like I have no idea how many I should order of those. You just kind of
all of them
have to guess. Yeah,
get as many as you can.
Knowing that now, I would have ordered as many as humanly possible. But yeah, it's just, if you're wrong, you're stuck with a lot of inventory. I mean, there's a lot of money tied up into that as well. So,
I mean, that was definitely a misperception that I had. I thought it was completely obvious they were all going to sell out instantly. Like, that was just me personally. I was like, these are all going to be gone. Like, and then I didn't realize that, because obviously for you're the one who's actually putting your money into it, right? And like investing. And so you have to be more careful about the risk. So I wasn't thinking in terms of like, oh, dealers should all just try to buy. To me, I was thinking, how do dealers divvy it up? Because I assumed every single dealer would want as many as possible. That's what I assumed.
Yeah. But it's also hard to judge. Like, I'm basing that off of the day that it was released. I get an email about it, and it's like, I don't know how popular this is going to be. I haven't heard any, anybody talking about it yet or anything.
Right.
And you kind of have to place your order right then.
Right. So you have to predict well into the future before any of the the Instagram posts or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the like Spyderco models and stuff I have ordered 6 months out in advance. Like, for example, the Sage 5 lightweight that's coming out. I ordered that, quite a while ago. It's just kind of, you have to plan in advance for what you think they're going to be.
Yeah,
that sounds very difficult.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that about like Eric's world as a dealer, like how much planning he has to go into just to buy or have a selection of certain knives.
Right, because everything is an investment.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things I want to do. I hate back order systems and stuff too, where I don't like the idea really of taking people's money before I have product in store, and I've kind of ran into that before, just not worth it in my mind. And so I like to be able to ship stuff whenever people pay for it, like immediately.
Yeah, definitely.
I think customers like that too.
I think you shipped my knife in a day. I think my steel wool cut jack you shipped in literally as soon as I sent the order in. So that's always awesome.
Yep. Yeah, it's dealing with lower volume. There's definitely benefits in terms of shipping too. Just that's one of my primary focuses, is to get stuff out as fast as it comes in, just so I can stay on top of it.
Yeah. So
yeah.
No, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was going to ask him, how deep are you in terms of collecting yourself? Is it more of a thing that, you collect some knives and you just like to just play with those? Or are you always wanting to collect more knives yourself? I don't know, some of us like to just collect a lot of knives for no reason, but I was just wondering how you see it.
It kind of puts me in a unique spot because in one hand, I don't like to buy a lot of knives that I can't stock and sell. Just because, like, if I'm carrying something and somebody asks me what I have, I want to be able to sell it to them instead of being like, hey, this is a one-off that you won't have access to, or it's not something that I sell.
Mm-hmm.
So in one term, that kind of limits my collecting, but also I have an inventory to play with, so whenever I want to check out new knives, I don't necessarily have to keep them. Like, if I just want to hold them, I'll order stuff in just because I think it's cool and decide whether I want to keep it or not, or sell it, just by, giving it a once-over. So that is a benefit to running my own shop, and it allows me to keep my collection a little bit on the smaller side. So I probably only have 7 or 8 knives in my personal collection.
Right, because you can always handle a lot of knives whenever.
Yeah, it kind of helps me tone down the urge to buy a bunch of different things. So, namely, probably just have my 562 zero tolerance. I have a Kaiser Gemini, a Chaparral lightweight, my ProTech Magic. I have that Benchmade Auto Triage, a Benchmade Phaeton. I've got a Steel Will, Cut Jack, just as kind of my camp knife. But those are pretty much my go-tos for my weekly rotation.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, actually, that you would keep it small. So, Brian, do you have any other questions? We should probably wrap up the podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm good. But we should do the giveaway really quick. All right, got it. Mr. Citric Acid Cycle. Isn't that like a biology thing? Like biochem?
Probably. Is that on Reddit or Instagram?
Instagram.
Okay, well, congratulations to Mr. Citric Acid Cycle on your new knife.
Oh, yes.
So you can basically just, to claim it, Brian will, he will DM you, and you will probably already have been in contact with him by the end of this podcast. But
he's going to DM me. No, he DMs me, man. He DMs me.
He DMs you?
Yeah. Well, then how do you know he watched the podcast?
No. Okay, well, we'll get into contact with you at some sort of.
Okay, here's the easier way. Have him email his address. Wait, no, that's stupid because then I don't know if it's his email. Hold on, I need to think about this better. Oh, have him DM me his address. Just that simple. Yeah, have him DM me his address. Just okay. DM it to Behind the Edge podcast page. Yeah, the Instagram.
Yes.
Easy.
Mr. Citric Acid Cycle, please DM your address to the Behind the Edge podcast Instagram page for your new custom knife. So this basically concludes our podcast. I want to give a big thanks to Eric for being our very first guest on this podcast. It was fantastic having you. You can find Eric. You can buy Eric. Buy knives from Eric at indianaknives.com, and also find him basically anywhere if you just search Indiana Knives. And you can also talk to him personally on our Discord server, which you can find in the sidebar of the old Reddit version of r/Knife Club. Eric,
I appreciate you guys having me. It was pretty nice talking to you guys.
Yeah, awesome. I will see you all on the next podcast.
Cheers.